Guys, Wolf here. Figured I'd show you a little project that a friend of mine brought me. He bought this a few months ago. Took it out to his property, and he said, I bought it for $10, and he says it run okay, but he says when I got close to finishing the job, the saw quit, and he said it smelled like burning oil. And he says I thought it was the carb, so I replaced the carb, and he said I just don't know what's wrong with it. And he says the local mower shop said it's not worth fixing. Well, that usually means because it's not a commercial saw, they don't want to be bothered. So I was like, all right, well, I'll take a look at it for you. So, and we always exchange favors. So I was like, I'll look at your saw for you, because we help each other out. So anyway, it's a 295 Poland. Well, first thing I noticed when I tried to start the saw, the plug that was in it, the original plug, it's just all fouled out. The gap isn't right, and I had a new plug because this one was firing, but I figured, well, you know, even with it firing, it could be shorted out. So instead of just taking a chance, I'll put a new plug in it. So I put a new plug in it, choked it, pulled it, and it popped. Well, his complaint was that it would pop, but it wouldn't stay running. Whether on choke or half choke or no choke, it would pop, but it wouldn't run. So I'm like, okay. So I figured, well, you know, he's changed the carb. Maybe he's put the gasket on wrong. So I take the carb off and check the heat, because on the Poland here it has a heat shield in the gasket. So I checked those, and they were on correctly. So I put them back on, and he already replaced the fuel line and the fuel filter. He figured, well, since I'm putting a new carb on it, I'll put a new filter and line on it just to be on the safe side. And he did flush the tank to make sure there was no trash in it. So with it being such a nasty day today, I figured I'd take a look at it. Well, sure enough, I pulled the choke, pull it, and it popped, but it wouldn't stay running. Usually it'll pop and it'll try to run and then die, and then you just take choke off, pull it, and it'll fire up and run. Well, this wasn't doing it. So I figured, well, it's got a new plug. You know, I checked the spark. It's got fire. And I'm like, well, let me check the cylinder. So I took the nut off here, pulled the muffler off, and checked the muffler. It wasn't all stopped up with carbon or anything. I checked the port and the cylinder. The port was clean. The cylinder didn't have any scoring on it. Checked the piston. Piston was really decent, had no scoring on it. So I'm like, okay. Put the muffler back on it. And I noticed that when I looked at the coil, when you would bring the magnet around here, the gap was like that. Well, when you set these armatures or coils, whatever different companies call them different things. Basically, it's the same thing, just a different terminology with different companies. Well, to set these, what you have to do is spin the flywheel so the magnet isn't near the coil, and then what you do is you loosen this bolt and this bolt down here, and then you take a business card, you slide it right up underneath there, and then you spin the flywheel. So the magnet pulls the armature down against the business card. Then what you do is you tighten your bolts up, get them nice and snug, not too tight. These are easy to snap off. Trust me, I know, I've done it before, and it is a bear to get them out. because they do put blue Loctite on these to keep them from backing out. And yes, when I did put them back in, I did put a little bit of blue Loctite on there just to keep them from backing out. But once you have it set and the coil is pulled down on the flywheel nice and snug, you go ahead, tighten your bolts up, and then you spin the flywheel and the card will come out. And then what you do is you spin the flywheel and you listen for any drag, because you don't want this coil dragging against this flywheel, because it can damage the coil. It can snap off the mounting tabs that these bolts go into. You can damage the flywheel. You can just do a lot of damage. It'll do a lot of damage. And I have seen it happen. So I can't stress that enough. Make sure that once you do this and you get it, you get it set and tight, that you go ahead and you spin this and make sure that coil isn't dragging on the flywheel. I'm thinking that somebody had thought that this coil was bad in the past, because I was looking at the magnet and I could see where it had been rubbing. So all they did was just loosen these up and then pulled up on it, just pried up on it and then tighten the bolts down. So I reset that. Then I noticed that all in this area here, it was just caked with this sawdust oil mix. And I mean, it was just caked on. It was almost oh god, I'd say half an inch thick in here. And I mean, it was just packed all the way around. So I just used a screwdriver, a dull screwdriver, and then just came in here and lightly, cleaned everything out. I made sure that the magnet was out of the way and cleaned all that up. I will take my blowgun, and the areas I couldn't get to, I'll get my blowgun in here and blow all this out, because these cooling fins have to be clean. Otherwise the saw will overheat and you'll cook the saw. But it's very important to keep all these cooling fins clean, and this area. When I pulled the starter cover off, as you can see on the outside, it's just caked with nastiness. I mean, I started to clean the outside. The outside down on the bottom here was real bad. The inside was just as bad, if not worse. And I started cleaning it. I'll spray it with some cleaner and then I'll wash it all off. As you can see, somebody had put new rope in the recoil here, and it isn't done right, so I'm gonna have to fix that too. But behind this cover is another cover that acts as an air shroud, and that's what this is. This goes on your saw like so, and directs the air through and into your cooling fins. Well, as you can see here, I cleaned off a little area here. I don't know if you guys can see that or not, but see how thick that buildup is? I think whoever he bought the saw from just ran the saw, and just ran the poor thing into the ground and never pulled the saw apart to clean it. And I used to do pulpwood, and at the end of each day, yeah, it's a little bit of a pain in the rear, but it's worth it, because it makes your saw last longer. You clean all these areas up, and so it'll get proper airflow to cool the saw, and the saw will last forever. And then there's another port here, right here. I don't know, it's kind of hard to tell, but this little port here was also stopped up with crap, so I cleaned it out, because it sends air into where the carburetor is to help keep the carburetor cool. So that was another issue. But this poor saw, you know, like I said, he ran it, and then he started having these problems. And you know, it's kind of, you know, you get what you pay for. But I figured I'd do this video for you guys just to show you, you know, when you buy something from a flea market or, you know, garage sale, check for this stuff. You know, see, you know, check the condition of what you're buying, because a lot of times people will rig stuff so it'll run long enough so when a customer comes up, oh yeah, I got this chainsaw, it runs great, and then of course you start it and it runs great, and then you get to use it for the first time, and if you're lucky, you won't have a problem. If not, you'll get 5-10 minutes into what you're doing, and then, you know, just like my friend here, you know, the saw dies, and then it's like, well, you know, what the hell, you know. But like I said, it's important to keep these areas, this area in here, this area in here, all around the flywheel, clean. The other issue with this was that this caked on material was also packed. It was packed up against the coil. So when I took it off, I cleaned it up. You know, I just used a rag and a little bit of, you know, I moistened the rag with a little bit of carb cleaner and wiped it clean. And same thing with the mounting studs. I clean those, and like I said, I'll blow all this off with the blowgun, and I'll go ahead and I'll adjust the chain for them. I'll pull the bar off. Usually when I pull these bars off, I'll take the bar completely off. I'll take this side cover, I'll take it off, and then clean it. Seeing how bad this side was, this side over here where the clutch is probably going to be just as bad, if not worse. So I'll pull this cover off, clean it. I'll pull the bar off, and then I have a tool I made that'll stick down in where the chain rides, and then I start from this end down here and then work my way all the way back to the end of the bar to get any buildup of gunk out of the rail here. And then some of these, it doesn't look like, there it is. I don't know if you guys can see it or not, but right above my finger is a little hole. And if your mower shop is a decent shop, they'll have, it looks almost like a little syringe, and what you do is you pack it with grease, and then you put the end in the little hole here, and that way you can pump a little grease in there, and it greases the little sprocket in here. And that's important, because I've seen where guys will plunge cut all the time, just stick the end of the bar into what they're cutting, and they won't grease this. And I've seen the top of the bar here where it's just the steel is blued because, one, they didn't have enough bar oil in the saw, and two, they never greased the sprocket, so it overheated and it started bluing the end of the bar, the tip here, and destroying the end of the bar. So it's very important that you guys, you know, even if you're not a professional tree cutter, you know, if you just have a saw, you know, it's always a good idea to get that. And they're not very expensive. I think the last one I bought was $5 or something. But it's important that, you know, you grease this. And like I said, I'll tighten the chain up for them. And I'll take my file, my rat tail file, and sharpen it. And if you guys want to know how to sharpen a chainsaw chain with a file, go visit Donnie Boy's channel, and he has a video on how to sharpen these chains with a file. But like I said, it's very important that you keep these areas clean, because then you'll run into problems with the saw running hot and cutting out. And if you replace the coil, make sure that you use a piece of business card. A lot of times the coil will come with a piece of cardstock, but a lot of times they don't. So if you got a coffee shop or whatever, a lot of places will have business cards. Just grab a couple and keep them on hand, and they do come in handy. I mean, I actually used one of my business cards to do this, but the card had one of my old numbers on it, so it's garbage anyway. But like I said, guys, when you buy stuff from a flea market or a yard sale, just go through it real close, and that way you avoid heartache in the end. And the other thing is, if you keep your saw clean, I know it's a pain, and it can be aggravating to take the covers off, but in the long run your saw will last 5 or 6 times longer than if you don't do it. So, but I figured I'd do a video of the saw here, and when I get it all back together, I'll fire it up and see how she runs, and go from there. So, you guys take it easy and have a great week. Till next time, Wolf out.